Okay, so let's get cracking. First thing we'll need is our new shiny sprue cutters. I've never used these before. Let's see how they work, I suppose. It's a bit dark. It's hard to say. Let's try and ramp the light up a little bit. That's better. Right. So what we want to do is cut this close to, but not right up against the part. We don't want to twist the part off because that'll put little stress marks in the plastic. So we're just going to get our cutters and we'll go miles away. That slipped off there. Go absolutely miles away from the part at the moment. Might work. Yeah. It's quite a hard plastic, this. So we're going to cut it like that, and we'll have our 3 little nubs on there. So we're going to come along close-ish in, just snip them off. I've got the instructions off camera because last time I looked back at a video, once the white hit those, they were a bit of a nightmare. See how the file works. We just want to get rid of those little scars where it's cut. And here there's a bit of a channel, is it? No, it's not. It just looks that way. I think that's a bit of flash. That file might be a bit coarse for that, but that doesn't matter. We've got our sanding stick in here. So go the medium side of the sanding stick and just gently get rid of any flash off that. And look for any other bits of extraneous plastic or anything. And that's the game really, till we get a series of components together. So I'll get some stuff ready off camera, but it's just a case of cutting away from the sprue, coming in close to finish it off, and finish off with a sanding stick, and then you'll end up with a neatish component. So let's see what we can do. Right, just a quick aside. So these sponsons have cleaned up. The little attachment tabs sit on the outside, so as long as they're flat and they aren't holding the hull off, you're never going to see those. So you're absolutely fine just using that coarse sponge with it. This little object, which fits here, the side is exposed. So what I've done is I've attacked it with the stiff sanding board, making sure it's flat down there, just to get rid of the attachment mark. Is that on camera? Yeah. Then when you've got rid of that, I've gone for the sanding sponge, and you don't push too hard, and just, because we've got a matte paint finish, we don't have to be super shiny, but that just gets some of the sanding lines out of it, so it makes a bit of a smoother, neater job. Okay, so that's where you'd use this sponge. Go in with this to get the first layer of grot off it, then come back with this to polish it. Then you'd use the smoother and smoother sides if you're going to go for a glossy finish. Okay, so that's just how we're using our bits and pieces from the toolkit. Right, and now the first use of the knife. This little stowage box, it's got an attachment point just here that if you sanded it, you probably lose that little ridge. I don't know if you met that. So this is when the knife comes in. You don't use the knife as much as you think, and you shouldn't cut towards yourself. If you just hold that on that surface, you can gently par away that little ridge here. And it's all these little details, and then we can just come in above that ridge and just nip that off. It's these little finishing touches that do make a difference, to be honest. You don't see the big stuff, but your eyes tend to pick out the small. Horrible noise, I know. This is where having a more advanced set of tools does pay off, because I've got a little scraper that get in there nicely, but I can't use that because it's not part of the rules of the game. So that's got rid of that little nub as much as you want. Feel it with your finger more than see it, because it'll be discoloured plastic. When you've finished, That's why I don't like round blades. Put your blade holder on. Round blades, round knives are a pain. So that's how we're going to clean up bits like that. So we'll just carry on and get some more bits together, and we'll muck about gluing things on. Okay, so we're ready to start gluing the first sub-assembly together, except for we need to be a bit careful. So these little storage bins sit on top of what I assume are fuel tanks. Okay, now if we put those on there, we're going to find it quite hard to get a nice even paint line around there without getting runs, or it'd be round pickets to the best sides poking to the outsides. That side we've cleaned up, we want that on the outside of it. Doesn't matter, I'm missing the point. I'm waffling. So I would say we don't glue those on at this moment in time, because we can paint all this up, then put a little blob of glue on these pins and drop it on later on, and then you're going to get a far better paint finish over this area, because we can then paint around that radius there rather than along here where you've got these nubs that are going to lift paint off the brush. Okay, so we'll ignore that. But for paint, for gluing, I'm going to show you on this little piece. So we've got this piece cleaned up. You find its location holes. Hopefully I don't wander off camera too much. Ugh. So that sits in there. Now, I say this stuff wicks along, so you have to be quite careful. So put your thumb well away from the glued joint. Now I'm doing this on camera. This is going to go horribly wrong. It's also a new thing, so I'll have a lot of glue on it. And just touch the brush there. And there and there. And that glue will have pulled underneath that by capillary action. That'll hold it in place. Then you can go around it. Say with the new one, you get a lot more glue on it. Just give it little touches where the plastic meets. And you shouldn't really give it a squeeze at this point. You get a bit of oozage, but just make sure it's in. And that's all it takes. If you were to have stuffed something up and that glue shot everywhere, leave it for a day to harden. Once it's completely hardened off, you can polish the plastic back. Don't try and correct it when it's wet. Everyone does, and it's a pretty thankless task. So that's all it is. Just touch your glue on, walk away. So I'll just glue all these components down we're going to have down, and then come back and chat about the next bit. Right, off camera we've started to put bits and pieces together. So that base plate is together, and then by doing it slowly we realise that this piece fits in here. So when we come to paint the lot, we don't need to worry about painting down here or the inside edge, because no one's ever going to see it, so that saves us a little scoosh of paint. I think, differing from the plans, what I'll end up doing is gluing this rear piece onto here, so they can take it off with the front and rear on it, and then we can paint all this as one unit and then just drop it in. They see doing it a slightly different way, but we have to be careful doing it and make sure we don't get glue everywhere. But I think that's going to give a better paint finish to do it that way. So we'll be going down that road. While I'm here, I noticed there's a little bit of a seam on that gear knob. Now, if we were to try and sand it, we'd probably snap the gear knob. So we just get our glue, because it's a bit melty. Just paint that over the gear knob. And don't touch it again, just walk away. I think that's, yeah, just make sure you don't go anywhere near that with your finger, and that when that hardens up, that little seam will be gone. And then we've got the other bit where we're a bit unsure. Or are we? Hang on, I might have misread the drawings there. Yeah. So this component fits there, and the trouble is we've got two whacking great ejector pin marks here and here, but we've also got some nice little rivet detail that we don't want to scuff off. So we need to get rid of those in theory. In practice, I think this one's going to be hidden behind a radio set, and this one may well be hidden by the brengun, but I'm not sure. And rather than build it all and have them there, we need to try and do something about that. And doing something about it isn't going to be necessarily easy. They're raised, so we can just get our little file, if we can at least reduce them. But we're going over this little gap here, and we're not going anywhere near those rivets, okay? Because I've got a skinny sanding sponge I normally use, which would get in there no trouble at all. We might be able to get a bit more out with a knife. I'm doing it on this side first, see what it looks like, because this is going to be hidden largely by the radio. And you do find this with older kits, these ejector pin marks come back even if they weren't there on the original releases, because as the moulds get worn, they start to leave little blemishes. It's going to be far from perfect, but it's reduced. It's getting there. Yeah, I've got a range of sanding sticks that are that wide. They just get in there and attack that no trouble at all, but we can only set our rules. We're doing this as a beginner's kit with beginner's tools, so I'm not going to cheat. And this is gradually doing it. You want to go over quite a big area, so because obviously you're taking plastic away, you don't want a sharp dent. You'll always see it, but not. The bigger area you go, the better, really. I think under a coat of paint, that'll probably look acceptable. We shall see. If we manage to put a wash in this, what we don't want is a hard area that will collect the wash. So that's why we go. Ooh, that's why we're going a little bit over the top on it. Actually, you've seen me do that once, so this is where I went wrong. On the last one, I've shown you everything. I just switch it off, and then we'll get back to it when it's done. Okay, not perfect, but vastly reduced, and it's a bit frustrating that I've got within arm's length a lot of products that get rid of that. But of course, we are doing it on this budget build, so we can't use those, but that'll do for now. So I'll get on dry fitting, and then we'll. Morning, it's Pete the Bumbling Modeler back again. That might not make sense if I don't do this as a separate video, although you're seeing this seconds later. This is 24 hours later for me, and yet again I forgot to turn on the light I've got. Let's do that. Too bright. Let's bring it down. That's a bit better. You see the bench bit better. So I've been gluing a few bits and pieces together off camera, and I've given some areas a first coat of paint. I don't know if it's bright enough. Let me see. The trouble is, that's an unpainted face, that's a painted face. You can't really see the difference. So the colour we've chosen is suspiciously similar to the colour of the plastic to start with. which is makes it a bit tricky to see what's going on. So wheels and suspension parts, I've used the pointed detail brush just to get in there. I don't think they're going to need a second coat. They're going to be in shadow at the bottom. I'm going to try and put a dusty wash over them. I don't really like painting them. It's not really a fun project, so probably leave that and then do something to them if we need to. The tools are scattered all over the bench because the bits have cut off and cleaned up. You need to put them somewhere safe, otherwise you lose things. I'd lost a bit already, but it's turned up. So I was chucking them into the toolbox we got, which is a good way of storing it. So these bits here need a second coat now, is the because he's going to get a bit more weathering now. Where I've tried to get rid of the ejector pin marks, that one's not obvious. That one looks ugly. That looks like an ugly scab, but it's going to hold a wash better than a round mark, because a round mark won't look right, and there's also going to be semi-hidden by storage boxes. So if you, although that looks bad there, once it's outside of the hole, isn't it? Once it's sitting in there and it's in the shadows, it doesn't look too bad at all. We'll get away with that. But I think if we left it as a round mark, that would really catch your eye. So that's had no paint on it at all, that bit. These bits have. All of the inside will need painting because we want to do our little bit of weathering and putting little washes around it before that goes into the main hull, because we'll never get to bits of it. So how did we achieve that? This paint does brush really well. Oh, the other thing I did was just put coat of paint on the underside here. You're never going to see that, but we can use that area to test different washes and weathering techniques, because it won't show on the top. So if it goes horribly wrong, it goes horribly wrong. I might put another coat on that. I tried different. I've watered this down slightly to paint it, but not a lot. So the painting is, get a tat at me, little. So in itself, that paint's quite thick and gloopy, which is good because it means it'll go a bit further, but it just needs a little bit of a help with a drop of water just to get it going. But a full drop on that would be too much. It's just, oops, that's probably too much already. Always add a bit more paint. I'm just thinning it down so it flows nicely on the excess of the brush. Paper towel ready, so we start with an empty brush. It's been pre-soaked. So I'll just give another little coat here because this is the area we're going to be. So you're not putting it on thick, and I'm not dragging it right over raised features, because if you do, it tends to scrape the paint out of the brush, and then you'll get a build-up of paint that runs. So although it's a bit more laborious, you're better off painting up to a raised feature rather than over the top of it, because it will act as a little scraper. Then you get a built-up edge of paint. So that'll, doesn't really stand out to say this. It does seem to go on surprisingly well. Did I? Yes, I did connect the microphone, didn't I? Yeah. So that's the area we're going to test our washes and things on. So we know it's around that little hatch cover on there. So these bits, then it's just a case of slapping it on. The fewer strokes you can get, the better. Just nice even strokes. The outside we'll paint when it's all together, because we don't want to mark them. I've got a dog, and everything I have has dog hairs in it. Sorry about that. So again, that raised area, just avoid dragging the brush across it that way, because it will just knock all the paint off the brush and we'll get a big blob. This will give us reasonable coverage for what we're doing. Again, it's only This is a whole new world for me. It's I've been airbrushing for so long now. I've forgotten how to brush paint. And I would leave it overnight before I put second coats on as well. I did sort of rush it a bit yesterday just to see what had happened, but it's not advisable because you can get paint lifting. The whatever the solvent is in the first layer in the paint can lift. First layer can lift the second layer unless it's fully cured, if that makes sense. So that's when you start to get marks because you're dragging up the paint from the layer underneath. It's a lot stiffer and it doesn't. I say the colour shift isn't dramatic, so if we miss bits on this, it's not the end of the world. And all we're concentrating on is the inside areas, not worry about the outside, as it's going to be painted in its entirety later on. So. And a lot of this is going to be hidden, as we saw from the painting in a weird way, so you can see it actually. It's not the most comfortable. A lot of those ejector pin marks I hope will be hidden, but with the limited tooling we've got, we have to accept there's going to be some flaws and blemishes in it. So really, that's the game for that. I'll just switch the camera off so you're not bored. I'll give this its first coat. These boxes a coat. Second coat for that. And then the internal bits theoretically are ready to go together. So I'll be back in 10 minutes when I've done that. Hi, back again. If it hasn't become apparent so far, it will become increasingly apparent. I'm an absolute numpty with any form of technology, so I filmed a bit where I painted this, and then realised my camera had slipped onto slow-mo, so that's unusable footage. But where we're up to is that's had 2 coats of paint, that's had 2 coats of paint, that's had 2 coats of paint. That has storage boxes are done. This needs a second coat, this needs a second coat. So what I'll do is second coat these so you can see how I avoided all the objects and lumps and bumps on that, and then I'll end this here, and then the next video you see, which will be a part 3 of this, I'll weather the inside faces of this, put a dust wash on it, and get the whole vehicle assembled so we can look at painting and weathering the outside, if that makes sense. So I'm quite liking this in the umbrella acrylic. I don't know what the first generation was like. One would imagine pretty pants, otherwise they wouldn't have invented a second generation. But as a product, the second generation one paints on really nicely. It doesn't leave brush lines and it's got quite good coverage, so I'm happy with that. So let's see what we did last time. I do find with it though, it's you're best off mixing smaller batches because it seems to gel over quite quickly, so there's a lot of wastage if you do it all in one blob. Let's get this to prop up the paint palettes so we're not using it. Let's get this and a bit of white tack to prop up my paint palette then. That way it just stays in the corner. And what I'm using here is a glass Petri dish. If you are going to do that, make sure you know where you're getting them from. I mean, Petri dishes are there to grow bacteria in. I know the provenance of this one because it doesn't matter where I got it from. I don't want to say on film, but I know it's never been used in a chemistry lab, so I know this is okay, or a biology lab. But just be careful if you're getting used lab glassware from eBay because you don't know where it's been and whether it's been properly disinfected. This was brand new and untouched. So, oops, that's probably a bit too much water. So I'll put this stuff off the brush. Have a nice time. Wick that away that we don't want. Just needs a little bit of water to help it along. Not a lot. So same again, get that all mixed in and nice and smooth. Get a paper towel and get the excess off the brush because we don't want that much on any one go. So, presuming I'm on camera still. So, got new glasses and my head magnifier doesn't work now. Right, so same again. We don't want to go across any features because that will, in a bit where we can't, where we're not going to see it, I'll show you. If you go like that, you get that build up there where it's going to be a box over that, so we can do that. So, paint around your features to get the coverage. And just smooth out. That one's always going to be a bit scabby around that side because of me showing you the problem you have. But this stuff does seem to self-level very well. So on this one, we're just going to go gently across here. Not too heavy on that plate because we don't want to fill in the detail. This may be slightly lifting the coat that's underneath. Actually, it's a bit too soon for a second coat, but while the house is quiet, I thought I'd do it rather than hearing dogs barking and what have you. And inside, we don't need to be, you can see it's starting to level already actually. You don't need brilliant coverage inside. It's going to be dark and dingy. The plastic's the same colour. I know that's the wrong attitude. So before, this bit's not going to get painted because you're not going to see it. I don't want to waste paint where I don't need to. Give that box a setting coat. And it's more, I suspect this stuff won't grip particularly well. Because it's an acrylic paint sitting on plastic, so it's just the skin sitting on top, and we're going to be a little bit aggressive with it and try and dry brush it tomorrow. So I just want to, you don't see a great deal of that either because the front of the cab comes over it, so I don't want to leave the paint too thin. And also where I went over that gear lever with the extra thin, you can see that little seam that's in the middle has disappeared, so it's always worth doing that as a sort of chemical deburring thing. So that's at its second coat. That's happy. This one was a lot of lumps and bumps to get around, so you need to be a bit careful how you paint really. So this grill, we're going to put a black wash inside it, but we do want to make sure the top's covered. Though, probably dry brush now. It might look like a lot went on there, but that'll shrink when it goes back. Don't want to put too much over those rivets because we'll have that paint dragging problem. So anywhere where there's a ridge which is going to drag the paint off your brush, you try and paint round so you're not leaving lumps and bumps and blobs all over the place. Now, last time I painted the back of that, but that's the outside of the vehicle, so we'll do that when it's all together, but the insides need good going over. It's quite a thin coat going on. We don't mount into this stuff everywhere. I'd normally have my head a lot closer, but with the camera, it's a bit tricky. This box is quite prominent, but we'll start off painting at the bottom to get some of the paint off because we don't want a lot of the paint on the brush. And if you start off in an area you're not going to see that well, you'll know how it's flowing before you get to the bit you want. So that bit that's prominent is now painted. So it's not taking long brush painting, it's just I'm more used to airbrushing where this would just be hosed down in one coat and done. Again, if I start at the bottom here, I can see how it's flowing. So by the time I get to these, which I guess are tie downs, there's little rectangles of plastic in this particular case. I know there's not too much paint on the brush, so I'm not going to have that splurging issue. Well, it looks dog rough at this stage, but it'll be fine. Right, I'll do this in its entirety. And then we'll switch off the camera and say then I'll switch it back on when I'm doing a pin wash and a weathering wash, and I'll assemble the vehicle, which I don't think there's anything to see on that. It's just getting me running extra thin in some joints, so I may or may not show a bit of it, but it's nothing. It's just it's a bit I'm not used to the old brush painting. Right, now cocktail sticks are quite nice now because we are, if we don't throw them on the floor, we have got a little, you can shove one there, so you've got something to hold this on without getting fingers all over it while we're painting around here. Initially, I'll just grab the back and hope my fingers don't rock around it. So again, although it'd be tempting to do everything in one swoop, I don't really want to go over that door because I'll get that paint squidging effect. I guess that's for some sort of maintenance. So I should paint up to it, then go over the top of it. That way I've got a bit of control of where the paint lifts. Even there, it lifts a little bit on that ridge, but there's a seat going on that, so you'll never see that. It is obvious lines now. I didn't go over the access door. I'll just take some of the paint off there. Go over the access door. And you can see from that side, the brush lines you can see there will flatten down. It's not that they're raised, it's just they're a different texture. And the bit we did earlier where we painted the inside of that black wasn't so much to get it black because it looked pretty dark anyway. It was to get rid of the shine of the plastic more than anything else. So it's a matte black. So that's going to look a bit more what it is now. I think that would have looked a bit obvious if we left it shiny. But you can see what looks like brush lines disappearing. They were just on that. Any last areas where fingers were, I'm holding it on that. I can pop that down there as well so that none of the recently painted bits are touching the floor. So that's the initial brush painting done. As I say, what I'll do is, judging by the way this paint behaves, I'll be able to try and put a pin wash on that around about 8 o'clock tonight, so in 5 or 6 hours time. But I think I'll edit what I've done. There's 2 videos so far, one about the toolkit and one about how we've prepped and painted, and then do the weathering and external painting as a separate standalone video, otherwise it'll go on for hours. So thanks for sticking with me with all my technical faults and foibles, and hopefully you'll join me later for the weathering side of things. Bye.